Brexit, Grexit, Departugal. How many more are going to Italy or just fruck off and check out?
Hello and welcome to the show. Colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and businessman Mark. This week we debate, beyond Brexit, are we heading for lean times?
Yes.
Well, maybe. But in fact, International Trade Secretary Liam Fox welcomed a new offer from Tory Brexiteers as a genuine attempt to find common territory. Yes, the idea being that the Brexit-backing European Research Group has set out 3 tests it wants Theresa May to pass to secure its support for her deal with the EU. Well, isn't this just a little bit too late? In fact, many economists believe that no matter what we have, whether we do have a deal or whether we don't have a deal, we're heading for lean times. It's going to be tough for the United Kingdom. But also, it could be tough for the rest of the European Union too. Now, in the United Kingdom, there are many Tory politicians who really are somewhat worried about their own futures. They believe that this is opening the door to the Labour Party and possibly that it might even open the doors to a new referendum. That is, that if we do have a deal, then actually the British public will have a chance to vote for whatever deal it is. Yes, and it just seems that too many politicians are arguing. In fact, some are just sitting on their hands and doing absolutely nothing. True. I'm afraid we're just heading for lean times. Those that lean far to the right go blue with fear of a socialist fight. Those that lean too far to the left are red with rage and see tax as theft. Those that simply sit in the middle are yellow-bellied and much of a riddle. But those that lean back and do nothing at all are devoid of grey cells and will head for a fall. Clergyman Pete, are we heading for lean times?
Well, businessman Mark, I think that we are, yes. I think that's inevitable. Because any sort of change disrupts the market. So disruption in the market, people don't like that, don't like uncertainty. So you have problems with people investing in your businesses or bringing their businesses into your country, however it's done. So that's an issue short term. But the question is, where do you go after that? What are you planning for? I mean, if we're talking about leaving the EU with what's often called no deal, which actually means on World Trade Organization rules, which is a deal of sorts, that's not the ideal situation. But it's still trading. It's not as though Britain is going to suddenly pull up the drawbridge and not trade. I mean, I think that this is where, are we going for lean times? This is where the Project Fear, as it's sometimes referred to, the attempt by the Leave campaign during the original referendum on Brexit was trying to they were trying to put forward the idea that it was going to be such a difficult time that there'd be rioting in the streets and people dying from malnutrition. There's an article out on iNews, the news consolidation site, which says that food imports are at risk from a no-deal Brexit. It says, quoting Fraser McKevitt, who was part of a report on UK consumers, he says a significant percentage of the food purchased by UK consumers is at risk of disruption in a no-deal Brexit scenario, with nearly 2/3 of all fresh food imported to the UK primarily from the EU. Then you're going to have trouble, and almost 46% of imported fresh food arrives from Spain, so which is in Europe. I don't know if you know that. But the thing is with this, I understand that there could be trouble, but here's what I say. Going for lean times doesn't mean everything's going to grind to a halt. Importing food into the UK, what do you have to do? Well, if you go into World Trade Organization rules, whatever the UK can set a tariff or not if it wants, and then all you have to do is fill in a form saying what the food is, and then you get charged accordingly. It's not like when you try and make it up as a huge barrier. Yes, it will be changes. So getting that, what I've just said, sorted will take a bit of effort.
Well,
but it's not the end of the world.
No, I agree.
One more thing I was going to say on that was I deliberately quoted that report because of the sort of subtle lying in it. For example, I did quote correctly when it said nearly 2/3, 62%, in fact, of all fresh food is imported to the UK, right? Primarily from the EU, no percentage on that. Right? The 62% is how much is imported, not how much comes from the EU. There's no percentage given on how much comes from the EU. It's just a con job trying to make you think that we're not going to get any food, because quite a proportion of that food comes from outside the EU, and it'd be actually easier to import. So, it's not quite the disaster that is being portrayed, but there are significant issues because you've got to get what are the tariffs? What is the procedure? You need to get that in place.
I agree. But now, from a business point of view, as we know, as all businessmen who are listening to the show will tell you, that actually it's all about having the facts, dealing with something, dealing with the knowns. What we've got is times. So there will be some disruption to business, particularly as we talked about for those organizations that rely heavily on supply chain, where, for example, that they are producing goods in certain countries and shipping them into the United Kingdom, or conversely shipping them out of the United Kingdom to other manufacturing plants in Europe. Yeah. Now, the fact is that we know that that's going to disrupt the flow of business production and business trade. But actually there's something as a bigger picture. So when we talk about this point about beyond Brexit and are we heading for lean times, I think that this is where I think it exposes the United Kingdom a little bit. We've not really put a great deal of focus on our manufacturing industries, and particularly our agriculture has suffered tremendously. Now, in some cases, that's because of being with the EU, and that in itself, from the fishing industries, etc., and many other areas of our agricultural industry, which actually now is a chance to get our own act together, put investment back in, so that when we consider those areas of growth, and economists have said quite openly in recent times that actually the future of the EU is actually going to be quite poor, in the sense that actually their economy is not going to grow anywhere near as much as some of the other nations, such as if we look at markets in China, in Japan, in the USA, and in many other areas of the world, where really we should, as a nation, the United Kingdom, be putting our efforts on doing deals. The problem is that from a business point of view, we've been sitting on our hands. So this idea of sitting back and doing nothing at all has certainly led us to potentially heading for a fall. Yeah. We've spent 2.5 years trying to negotiate with the EU, which, fair enough, we had to negotiate. But what we should have done is come out very quickly. We should have come out within a few months. And then we would have been in a better position to negotiate. We could not only have negotiated with the EU, we'd have been in a stronger position to have actually negotiated with the likes of Japan and China and many other parts of the world. And we would by now actually know, and businesses crucially would know what they're dealing with, how to develop their business models. Because when you are a business, there are a number of things you've got to do. You've got to adjust because of the markets that change. If you're out of a certain arrangement like the EU, you will have to change. You're going to have to look at everything from your supply chain, the skills coming and going, the skills that are in fixed countries. You're going to have to look at dealing with new laws, etc. All of these things do shape a business. Yeah. But 2 years on, that would have all been sorted. We've wasted 2 years. Politicians have dragged their heels. There's too much infighting. We've got to this stage. I think what will happen is when we're out, now whether that's on the 29th of March or whether it's a few months later with the dreaded extension, what will happen is that by the end of 2019, businesses will know what they're going to have to deal with. And I think that the government is going to have to radically rethink their priorities. At this moment in time, this is my opinion, the United Kingdom has put too much money in the wrong areas. For example, We think that we are a military might. We're no longer a military might, let's be honest. What we should be doing is I know there's enormous pressure from the United States for us to spend a certain percentage of our GDP on military, but we're not really strong enough to do that. We need to cut that back. That's not to say we don't have a military force. That's not to say we don't invest in certain projects.
Maybe cut back on the Navy, for example.
Yeah, maybe those sort of things. But the point being is, what we should be doing is putting our investment in manufacturing, putting our investment in the agricultural industries, in the fishing industries that have been depleted over the last many years, being part of the EU. We've not really held a strong position there. We should be stronger as a fisheries community. Too many communities have fallen away. They've lost the jobs, we've lost the skills, and that's a disaster. We're a seafaring nation, and we know how to fish. We know how to do that. And the other point you mentioned
I think that's a good point. The fishing's
food.
Such an important point.
Yeah. The importing of food. Yes, I think that we do import a lot of goods from other parts of the world. But ironically, if we got our act together, we are, as a productive nation, as an agricultural nation, and where we have that industrial heritage, we also are in a good place where we can work with other markets and actually be just improve our exporting and our ability to add value to the rest of the world. At the moment, I feel that what's happened, if I take a step back and look over the last 10, 20 years, we've been too reliant on the European Union and that particular territory. And many people will say, but hold on, we are doing trade with China and we are doing trade with America. Yes, but it's not enough. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, we haven't been listening to the economists, we haven't been listening to business people. And the biggest thing is, one of the reasons why we are going to head for lean times is politicians who really haven't really understood business. To be a good politician, yes, you've got to be able to understand law, processes, politics, but you've got to understand business. Yes. And the current wave of politicians in recent times haven't got it from a business perspective.
No, I agree. And I just want to go back a bit. I mean, I don't want to spend too long saying, what might have been, but I think it is instructive of what happened, about how long we spent on each part of the negotiation. I haven't as much. I'm not a businessman. I haven't as much experience. I say not a businessman. I do have a small business, a sort of coffee bar that I run, but I'm not experienced as yourself or other businessmen. So maybe I haven't got this quite right, but I think overall I've got it. Then I think the government of Britain spent the wrong amount of time on different parts. So first of all, and if you go back and listen to the podcast, at the time when the Brexit decision was made, we were saying this, that you don't want to invoke Article 50 or leave in the other way that I mentioned, just simply getting rid of the Communities Act, because that would allow you to leave under British law. However you did it, don't do it too soon. Because if you're going to be negotiating, you want to set how you're going to negotiate, what order you're going to negotiate in. You need to have the framework for the negotiations, as well as the timetable, the framework, how do we judge a success? How do we decide? At what point do we judge a decision is made? Will it be ongoing? So, for example, if you make a decision on one area, is that then decided, tied up, and then we go on to another area? Or do you try and negotiate the whole thing, which is what's been done? And I think that's a poor decision, poor way of doing it, and come up with a deal at the end. So what happened was, although it seemed quite a delay, we left too soon. No, it wasn't the timing, it's what had been done. Hadn't been a proper negotiation of how we were going to negotiate. Basically, the EU told Britain how they were going to do it. And what should have happened? Well, no, we're not going to start negotiating unless you agree to do it in this way. Britain, far in advantage of Britain to get trade deals done first. And then they'd be able to rearrange it. We'd be able to then prepare and get ready. And then we move on to other things, which are just as important, maybe more important. For example, what happens to the rights of Europeans in Britain and vice versa. Those sort of things are very, very important. but they weren't, in terms of the order you needed to do things in, they weren't the first thing. So we spent too long, we've had a long time doing nothing, but previously we have spent hardly any time arranging how we were going to negotiate. So now bring that up to today. What should you do? Well, we need to do the same thing. I mean, what we should be spending time doing now, this is my take on it, is informing the EU that we would like to negotiate, but as it's now, well, I'm assuming that any deal that Theresa May puts to Parliament is actually going to be voted down, which isn't certain anymore with certain Brexiteers wavering, as you're saying, but and Liam Fox wavering. But the thing is that I would say is that if it is voted down, then Theresa May goes back to the EU on behalf of the government and on behalf of Britain, and says, right, we're going to leave under WTO rules, and we're going to begin negotiating trade deals, including with the EU.
Yes.
And negotiating other things, all the other parts of being a good neighbour, negotiating with them from that position. So then you say, so what we should be spending time doing now is what I said at the start, how we negotiate. Let's have a framework for negotiation and not start negotiating until that's ready. And as soon as they realise that, as soon as our negotiating partners in the EU realise that we being Britain, are actually in the commanding position, that we have a strong position, then I think that they'll change their attitude. It's not that they don't realise it, by the way. I just what I said. It's that they realise that we don't.
Yeah.
Britain is acting as though it's in a poor position, whereas as one of the strongest members of the EU, we're in a very good position. And without, in its entire lifetime, without ever having balanced its budget, the EU is suddenly going to be in a dire position when the income from Britain dries up.
Yes, well, that is a crucial point, and from a negotiation point of view, that is a very strong position. Now, of course, there are exceptions. We know that Germany, being very much an economic might in its manufacturing and its service-based industries, and France has nowhere near the same strength, but has lots to offer. But the fact is, you're right, the likes of Italy, Portugal, Spain and others, and Greece, of course, are in economic lean times, and it will get worse. I do believe, though, that what will happen is that when the United Kingdom comes out, I think that a lot of those other weaker countries will have to reevaluate their position within the EU. And I think that what we will see is that we will see this cascading effect, or domino effect, as many people will say, that actually others will start to question the whole purpose of this project, this EU project. But coming back to what does it mean, I think we are going to see 2 or 3 years of some harsh times. There will be many examples, where small, medium and large companies will probably decide to pull out. There have already been some to pull out of the United Kingdom, and that will impact jobs. But similarly, again, there will be the knock-on effect on the service-based industries. The manufacturing side is an interesting one, but I think that what we need to do, and what I would be really pushing politicians for, as well as business people, is that during this lean time, is to start to push for a nation as a United Kingdom that gets back to doing what it does well. It is innovative. Its technology industry, ironically, is actually booming tremendously. There are, I think, the highest proportion of startups that are actually growing rapidly, whether it be in cybersecurity, whether it's in software, whether it's in hardware, and they're adding value to not just the United Kingdom, but to the rest of the world. And we are an innovation hub, and that is a great opportunity for other nations to work with us.
Yes.
I think we've got to say, okay, look, this problem project that we've often seen, this EU, shouldn't drag us down, but we should try and sort of step back and think, okay, we're going to come out of it. We're not ignoring it, but what we've got to say is we've now got to position ourselves differently and think, okay, that's been a great market for us in the past. Now we need to look to the future. The future from, should we say, a long-term point of view, the point where we can actually start to cut back our debt, because the United Kingdom still has a massive debt, we will get there. Eventually we will get there, but it will take a long time. And I think that every individual needs to be part of that process. Every person who is working needs to reevaluate their own lives as well as part of that process. Maybe they won't have as much money, but there is still prospects. And if we can put the efforts into nurturing the next generation of engineers, technology specialists, scientists, mathematicians, and so on, as well as other people in agriculture, as we've talked about, and many other industries, we are a nation that has a proven track record to add value to the world. And that's what we've got to get back. Unfortunately, in the last 10, 20 years, we've been sucked into this mire of the EU. Now is the time to leave.
Yes.
So listeners, what do you think?
man.
I mean, what do you think it will be the outcome? So beyond Brexit, do you think we're head for lean times? Or maybe you have an alternative view. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, we're getting closer and closer to the 29th of March. Will we leave or will it be extended? I hope not. Join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.